A small, run-down diner sits on the corner of Maple Street and Willow Avenue. The neon sign above the entrance flickers, its bright red and blue letters barely holding on, reading, Maggie's Diner. The sound of cars rushing by fills the air as the sun begins to rise. A few morning commuters walk past, bundled up in coats, their breath visible in the crisp air. This place isn't much to look at. The paint is chipped, the windows slightly fogged, and the metal door creaks whenever someone walks in. But for Tasha Williams, this little diner isn't just a job, it's home. The moment you step inside, the scent of freshly brewed coffee, sizzling bacon, and warm maple syrup welcomes you. The diner has an old-school charm, red vinyl booths, laminated menus, and a jukebox that barely works. A radio hums softly in the background, playing a classic R&B tune, barely audible over the sound of plates clinking and a grill sizzling. Behind the counter, Tasha Williams moves with practiced ease. She's in her late 20s, her dark brown braids pulled back neatly, her uniform slightly worn from years of service. Her smile is warm, genuine, the kind that makes people feel at home. She's worked here for 6 years. The pay isn't great, the hours are long, but she takes pride in her job. To her, serving people is more than just a paycheck. It's about making everyone feel like they matter. Across the diner, Mr. Higgins, the gruff, no-nonsense owner, watches her closely. A stocky man in his late 50s, Mr. Higgins runs Maggie's Diner with an iron fist. To him, time is money. And every second Tasha spends talking to customers, offering extra napkins, or showing kindness, is a second wasted. Mr. Higgins, gruffly from behind the counter. Tasha, quit chatting and focus on the orders. We got paying customers to serve. Tasha nods quickly, not arguing. She never does. She's learned not to push back, no matter how unfair he is. A new customer walks in, and immediately, Tasha notices him. He's not one of their regulars. He's not dressed like the truck drivers, construction workers, or locals who stop by for their morning coffee. Instead, he's wearing a suit, but something about him feels off. His tie is loosened, hanging unevenly around his neck. His shirt is wrinkled, as if he's been wearing it for hours. His dark eyes scan the room quickly, darting back and forth like he doesn't quite belong. And his shoulders are slumped, as if he's carrying the weight of the world. For a moment, he hesitates near the entrance. He looks like a man lost in his own thoughts. Finally, after a long pause, he moves. Slowly, carefully, toward an empty booth in the far corner. He doesn't sit down like most people. Instead, he lowers himself into the seat carefully, like he's carrying something heavy and invisible. Tasha watches him for a second longer, her gut telling her something's wrong. She grabs a menu and walks over, Tasha warmly placing the menu down. Good morning, sir. Can I start you off with some coffee? The man barely looks up. When he does, she gets a good look at him. His face is tired, drawn, like he hasn't slept in days. There's something deep in his eyes, something heavy. And then, he speaks. His voice is low, almost a whisper. Mysterious man, just water, please. Just 2 words, but they say so much. Tasha nods, sensing something in his tone, something deeper than just exhaustion. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't push. She just walks back to the counter and returns a moment later, setting a glass of water in front of him. Tasha, softly. You take your time. Let me know if you need anything. For a brief second, he looks up at her, and for the first time, there's something in his eyes. Not just exhaustion, not just sadness, something else. Something like surprise, like he wasn't expecting kindness. As Tasha walks back toward the counter, she feels it before she sees it, eyes burning into her. She turns, and there's Mr. Higgins. He's watching her closely, arms crossed. M.R. Higgins. Tasha! She stops. Mr. Higgins. We don't have time to cater to loiterers. If he's not ordering, he needs to leave. Her stomach tightens. This again. She hates how Mr. Higgins always judges people on sight, always assuming the worst. She takes a breath, keeps her voice calm. Tasha. He's just deciding. Mr. Higgins, you've got tables to clean. Focus on paying customers. Tasha bites her tongue. She's used to this. She knows how to pick her battles. But something about that man in the corner won't let her ignore him. She knows what it's like to feel invisible, to have people look right through you like you don't exist. She's not going to do that to him. Over the next few minutes, she finds small ways to help. She refills his water before he asks. She sets a napkin on the table when she sees him fidgeting with his tie. And then, finally, she walks back over. She speaks softly, like she knows he needs to hear something kind. Tasha, you look like you've had a rough morning. Let me know if I can get you something warm. For the first time, the man really looks at her. For a long moment, he says nothing. And then, a slight smile tugs at the corner of his lips. It's faint, barely there. But it's something. Mysterious man. Toast and scrambled eggs. That's all. Tasha nods and walks away. She doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know his story. But something inside her tells her, this man needs help, and she's not about to ignore that. The morning rush is dying down. A few customers remain, truck drivers finishing their coffee, an elderly couple sharing a plate of pancakes. But Tasha's focus is on the man in the corner. He sits in silence, slowly eating his scrambled eggs and toast. He doesn't check his phone. He doesn't look around. He just stares at his plate, lost in thought. Tasha keeps an eye on him. Not because she's curious, but because something about him feels heavy. Like he's carrying a burden no one can see, and she knows that feeling all too well. She watches as he reaches into his pocket, and then his entire body tenses. His hand comes up empty. His face changes. First, confusion, then panic. His breathing picks up. He checks another pocket, then another. Nothing. And suddenly, Tasha knows what's happening. She's seen this before. The look of someone who just realized they don't have their wallet. The man swallows hard, his face flushing with embarrassment. He takes a deep breath, then calls Tasha over. She already knows what he's about to say. I think I forgot my wallet. Tasha doesn't hesitate. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't make a scene. She just smiles softly. Tasha, it's okay, I've got this one. The man freezes. For a second, it's like he didn't hear her right. His eyes widen. Mysterious man. I can't let you. Tasha. It's just eggs and toast. Then she leans in slightly. Her voice drops. Not out of secrecy, but out of understanding. Tasha. Consider it a kindness. For a moment, he just stares at her. Like no one's ever done something like this for him before. Like he's trying to find the right words, but can't. Finally, he nods slowly. And then he says two words. Two words that carry more weight than she realizes. Mysterious man, thank you. Tasha nods back. She doesn't make a big deal out of it. She clears his plate and walks back toward the counter. To her, it's just another act of kindness, something she would have done for anyone. But she doesn't know that this small moment just changed her life forever. As Tasha sets down the empty plate, she feels it, the burning stare from behind the counter. She looks up, and sees Mr. Higgins. His arms are crossed. His face is cold. His voice is sharp as a knife. Mr. Higgins. Tasha, my office now. Her stomach drops. She knows what's coming. Int. Mr. Higgins' office. Moments later, the office is small and cluttered. Stacks of invoices pile up on the desk. The smell of stale coffee and frustration lingers in the air. Tasha stands stiffly in front of Mr. Higgins, her arms crossed. He leans against his desk, shaking his head. His voice is low, but sharp. Mr. Higgins. What were you thinking, giving that man a free meal? Tasha keeps her expression neutral. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't argue. She just says the truth. Tasha. He looked like he needed help. Mr. Higgins laughs coldly, not because it's funny, but because he thinks she's naive. Mr. Higgins, he looked like he needed help. Then his face darkens. Mr. Higgins, this is a business, Tasha, not a charity. You think eggs and toast are free? Tasha's jaw tightens. She hates this. She hates how Mr. Higgins sees people as nothing more than money. She takes a breath, keeping her voice steady. Tasha, I don't see how a plate of eggs and toast is going to bankrupt the diner. Wrong answer. Mr. Higgins' face turns red with anger. His hand slams onto the desk. Mr. Higgins, that's not the point. You undermined me in front of a customer, and now you're arguing with me? Tasha flinches, not because she's scared, but because she realizes something. This was never about the food. This was about control. Mr. Higgins wants her to fall in line, to be obedient, to turn her back on the people who need help, and for the first time in a long time. Tasha realizes she can't do this anymore. She straightens her shoulders. Her voice is quiet, but firm. Tasha, if that's how you feel, then I'll go. Mr. Higgins blinks, like he wasn't expecting her to call his bluff. There's a long pause. Then, his voice turns cold. Higgins, you're fired. The words hit like a slap. Not because she didn't see it coming, but because after 6 years of hard work, after giving her all to this place, she's being tossed aside over a simple act of kindness. Tasha walks out of the office. The diner is silent. The other staff members watch her, stunned. She doesn't say goodbye. She doesn't plead. She just grabs her coat and bag. Her hands are shaking, but her head is held high. As she steps outside, the cold morning air hits her skin. She takes a breath, and for the first time in 6 years, she has nowhere to go. She has no backup plan. But as she walks down the street, one thought keeps repeating in her head. I did the right thing. She doesn't know it yet, but the man she helped, the one she thought was just another struggling soul, he's about to change her life forever. Fade out. Tasha walks home in silence. Her feet move automatically, but her mind is spinning. The crisp morning air bites at her skin, but she barely feels it. She keeps hearing Mr. Higgins' voice in her head. You're fired. She had given 6 years to that diner. 6 years of long shifts, tired feet, fake smiles, and all of it meant nothing the moment she chose kindness. Her apartment is small, a 1-bedroom unit above a laundromat. It's not fancy, it's not perfect, but it's home. Tasha climbs the stairs, her shoulders heavy with exhaustion. As she reaches the door, she hears a familiar sound. Meow. She looks down to see Smokey, her gray tabby cat, weaving between her legs. A small smile breaks through the storm in her head. Tasha. Hey, baby. At least someone's happy to see me. She steps inside and drops her bag onto the couch. The apartment is modest, but clean. A tiny kitchen with mismatched dishes. a couch with a small tear on the armrest, a coffee table covered in unopened bills. She stares at them, her chest tightening. Rent is due in 2 weeks. She has no job, no savings, no backup plan. She sits on the couch and drops her head into her hands. The weight of everything starts pressing down. Doubt creeps in. Did I make a mistake? Could I have handled it differently? Was it worth it? She takes a slow, shaky breath. And then, knock, knock, knock. Her head snaps up. She wasn't expecting anyone. For a second, she just stares at the door. Her heart beats faster. Slowly, she rises to her feet. She hesitates, then unlocks the door and pulls it open. Her breath catches. Standing there is him, the man from the diner. Only now, he looks completely different. Gone is the wrinkled suit. Gone is the loosened tie, the slumped shoulders. Now he stands tall, confident, collected. His suit is perfectly pressed. His hair is neatly styled. His expression is serious, but warm. And in his hand, he holds a small envelope. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. Tasha blinks, stunned. Finally, she finds her voice. Tasha, you? The man nods. Mysterious man. Good morning, Tasha. Her pulse quickens. How does he know her name? She glances at the envelope in his hand, then back at his face. Everything feels unreal. Tasha, what are you doing here? The man exhales, like he's been waiting for this moment. Then he does something unexpected. He extends his hand. Let me introduce myself properly. A pause. Mysterious man. My name is Daniel Carter, and before I explain, he lifts the envelope slightly. I need you to know something. Tasha crosses her arms, studying him. She doesn't know what's coming, but something in his eyes tells her. Whatever it is, it's about to change everything. Tasha stands frozen. Her mind is racing. This man, Daniel Carter, was just a stranger in her diner yesterday. Now he's at her doorstep, looking like a completely different person. His wrinkled suit and tired expression are gone. Now he's put together, like someone important, and he's holding an envelope. Tasha's eyes flick to it, then back to his face. She's skeptical, cautious, a little uneasy. Tasha, how do you know my name? Daniel smiles slightly, but there's something serious in his expression. Daniel, calmly. I asked around. Beat. You left an impression, Tasha. She raises an eyebrow. Tasha. Did I? Daniel nods. A long pause. Then he takes a slow breath and drops the bombshell. Tasha, I wasn't just some random guy walking into the diner yesterday. Tasha tenses. Something in his voice changes. He's no longer just a polite stranger. There's weight behind his words. He watches her carefully, then continues. Daniel, I was testing something. An experiment, if you will. Tasha's eyes narrow. Her stomach tightens. Tasha, an experiment? Daniel nods. Daniel, I run multiple businesses across the country. Big ones. Tasha blinks. She hadn't expected that. Daniel continues, his tone steady. Daniel. But lately, I've been told I've lost touch, that I don't understand what it's like to struggle anymore. Tasha's arms remain crossed, but she's listening. Daniel. So I decided to see for myself. I dressed down, left my wallet at home, and walked into places like your diner, just to see how people treat someone they think has nothing to offer. The words sink in. Tasha's mouth parts slightly, her brain trying to process it all. This was planned? This was a test? She doesn't know whether to feel flattered or furious. She stares at him for a long moment, then scoffs. Tasha, so, what? You played poor for the day? Daniel exhales. He knows how this sounds. Daniel, It wasn't a game, Tasha. I wasn't looking for pity. I was looking for people who still believe in kindness when there's no reward in sight. He steps forward slightly, his voice gentler now. Daniel. And you were that person. Tasha swallows. Something about the way he says it makes her chest tighten, because deep down, she knows it's true. She didn't help him for attention. She didn't do it expecting anything in return. She just did it, because it was the right thing to do. She looks at him, still unsure what to say. Finally, she gestures at the envelope in his hand. Tasha, what's that? Daniel smiles slightly. Daniel, your kindness didn't go unnoticed, Tasha. She hesitates, then takes the envelope. Her fingers tremble slightly as she opens it. Her eyes scan the contents. And then, her heart stops. Inside is a check. A check with so many zeros, her breath catches in her throat. She stares at it. Her hands shake. She looks back up at Daniel, her voice barely above a whisper. Tasha, this can't be real. Daniel nods. Daniel, it is. Tasha's knees feel weak. This is more money than she's ever seen in her life. Her mind is racing. With this, she could pay rent for years. She could start fresh. She could change her life. But a part of her hesitates. She meets his eyes. Tasha, why? Why me? Daniel's expression softens. He takes a step closer, his voice gentle, sincere. Daniel, because you didn't see me as a problem to be solved. Beat. You didn't look at me like I was beneath you. Beat. You just helped. No questions. No judgment. Just kindness. Tasha swallows hard. She doesn't know what to say. She looks back at the check. It feels unreal, like a dream she's about to wake up from. Finally, she looks up at him, her voice shaking. Tasha, what do you want me to do with this? Daniel smiles, and then he says something that makes her entire world shift. Daniel, I want to help you build something for yourself, Tasha. A pause. Daniel, you ever thought about starting your own business? Tasha's eyes widen. Her heart races. A business. Her? She never let herself dream that big. But now, for the first time, it doesn't feel impossible. She takes a shaky breath, looks down at the check, then back at Daniel. And deep down, she knows her life is about to change forever. Tasha stares at the check in her hands. Her mind is spinning. Daniel's words echo in her head. You ever thought about starting your own business? She never let herself dream that big. Not with bills stacking up. Not with years of struggle weighing her down. Not when she had spent so much of her life being told to stay in her place. She swallows hard, then looks back at him. Her voice is soft, hesitant. Tasha, I don't even know where to start. Daniel smiles. Not a pitying smile, not a fake one. A real one, like he believes in her. Daniel, that's where I come in. A pause. Daniel, this isn't a loan, Tasha. It's not charity, it's an investment. Tasha raises an eyebrow. Tasha, in what? Daniel gestures toward her. Daniel, in you. The words hit her like a wave. For so long, she'd been made to feel small, like she was just a waitress, just someone who served coffee and cleaned tables. But now, someone was looking at her like she was worth more, like she could do more. She lets out a shaky breath, still overwhelmed. Tasha, what if I fail? Daniel shrugs. Daniel, then you try again. A beat, Daniel, but something tells me you won't. Tasha stares at him, at the check, at the life that suddenly feels so much bigger than she ever imagined. And then, for the first time in a long time, she lets herself believe. She lifts her head. Her eyes burn with something new. Not fear, not doubt, determination. Tasha, okay, a beat. She meets his eyes, And this time, there's no hesitation. Tasha, let's do this. Montage, the road to a dream. Tasha sits across from Daniel in a coffee shop, sketching ideas on a notepad. She walks through an empty storefront, imagining what it could become. She meets with contractors, picking colors, choosing furniture, building her dream from the ground up. She carefully selects a team, not just workers, but people who believe in kindness. She tests recipes, perfecting every plate. She smiles for the first time in weeks, real, unshakable joy. The sign above the door reads, Tasha's Table, more than just a meal. A line stretches around the block. People from all walks of life are here. Neighbors, old friends, and complete strangers who heard her story. Inside, the cafe is warm, welcoming. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and homemade biscuits fills the air. A job board hangs on one wall, offering opportunities to those in need. A community fridge sits in the back, stocked with meals for those who can't afford one. This isn't just a business. It's a place for second chances. A place where kindness isn't weakness, it's power. And at the center of it all is Tasha. The night is winding down. The grand opening was a huge success. Tasha stands near the counter, watching the last customers leave. She feels light, like she's exactly where she's meant to be. She turns and sees Daniel standing near the entrance, watching her. She walks over, a grateful smile on her face. Tasha, you really did all this for me? Daniel shakes his head. Daniel, no, Tasha, you did this. I just gave you a little push. Tasha smiles. She glances around the cafe. This place, her place, is real, and she built it because of one small act of kindness. She turns back to Daniel, her voice full of gratitude. Tasha, thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Daniel nods. A pause. Then he glances around the cafe and smirks. Daniel, so are you hiring? Tasha laughs, a real, full-hearted laugh. And for the first time in a long time, she feels completely, undeniably free. Never underestimate the power of kindness. A small moment of compassion can change someone's life, and maybe even your own. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content.